Hey everybody, Omar here, your Edge of South Africa guy, and I am back with another fun-filled video for you. And today we're going to be just doing some sort of contrast and comparison between two different knife makers because, knife collecting is actually a personal thing. It has a lot to do with your own taste. What do you like? What kind of knives do you like to buy? Are you more of a like a rustic knife collector who uses his custom knives all the time, or do you want something that you would probably maybe consider safe cleaning every once in a while? So I was going through my knife collection. I found two different knife makers with two totally different styles, and I just want to take a look at the way these guys designed their knives because there is a lot of their personality in the knives, and there's something about the way they envision a knife or what they envision a knife to be that appeals to you. So we're just gonna take a look at these knives in an aesthetic sense. We're not gonna do any, we're not gonna like take a look at the way they build it or anything. Just purely on aesthetics. Like, what do you like? So the first knife maker is Clyde Challenor, and both these knife makers are from South Africa. So there is a specific way that knife makers like to build their knives and put their knives together. It's sort of like their ideal philosophy in creating a knife. So with Clyde Challenor, he's the kind of knife maker that, first of all, you need to understand Clyde Challenor actually uses all of his knives. That's one. Number two, you have to look at Clyde Challenor as if though he was once you at one point in time. He was somebody that actually collected knives and got into this hobby. However, he used all the knives that he collected. So that definitely influences the way he makes a knife. And I found Clyde Challenor to be sort of a knife maker that is kind of 50-50. I mean, obviously, he wants the knife to look aesthetically good. But at the same time, he's the kind of guy that wants his knives to function just as well as they look. Not saying that he doesn't give any thought to the aesthetics of what the knife looks like, because he does do that. But when you buy his knives, he's under the impression that you are going to buy his knives, you're going to appreciate the aesthetics, and you're going to use what he gives you. You're actually going to use this knife for everyday carry. And you can see that in the way that he builds the knife. So, for example, this is the Clyde Challenor Viper. This is one of his more popular knives. In fact, this is the knife that launches his career. Now, first of all, the knife is a front flipper, so that tells you right off the bat that front flippers are one of the things that South African knife makers do is they create front flippers. Some of the front flippers are very accessible. Some of them are not that accessible. This is one that's very accessible. Basically, you just take your thumb and pop it open because there's so many different variations of a front flipper. I've seen it on the top. I've seen it where they've got so much of the front flipper sticking out. I've seen it where there's practically nothing sticking out. You actually have to get to it. I've seen it where you're not able to use your index finger to pop open the knife, right? That all plays into how a knife maker creates his knife and how he envisions it, because some of them actually will create knives that are just safe queens or more towards the safe queen area. And you're going to see that in a couple of seconds. So Clyde Challenor made his front flipper very accessible. Right. Secondly, the ergos are amazing on this. I mean, this is definitely made for use, without a doubt. Your three fingers fit here, your index finger fits there, and you've got probably the best grip you're ever going to get using this custom piece. He used one of the more popular blade shapes, which is the drop point blade. It's got just enough of a belly, and yet there's also a lot, enough belly there for drawing cuts, but also for just all-purpose cutting. He doesn't make any bones about it. It's just, you're going to be using my knife. I want you to use my knife. So he answers that quite easily in his design. His answer for aesthetics, one of the things that was brought to his attention as a knife maker was that most knives that have some sort of bling on them really only have it on the front side of the knife. But Clyde Challenor wanted to alleviate that, give you a little something more. So he puts carbon fiber on both sides of the knife. He was one of the first knife makers to actually highlight that fact. At least from what I could see. Because before I saw Clyde Challenor knife, I never saw carbon fiber on both sides. He kind of accentuated that, and that is not an easy thing to do. He actually created it so that you see just enough of it, even with the pocket clip sticking out, right? So he answers all of your aesthetics. He's also more into like the details aesthetically. If you notice, like the three lines here, they completely line up perfectly, you know, with the frame lock, so that when you have it in this position, you can actually see that it's actually perfect. In other words, when you lock it in place, he makes sure that when it is closed, that the aesthetic of the three lines are all lined up perfectly. In other words, not even by like a millimeter is it off, because that would totally destroy the aesthetic of a knife. So Clyde Challenor takes a lot of pride in that. He takes a lot of pride in doing things like polishing these little screws here. Look how shiny that is. It pops. Really, really pops. So his approach to aesthetics and making this a knife that you want to use is to accentuate basically the minimum that he does with it. So you can see he only puts just the carbon fiber on both sides, right? And then he's got these three aesthetic lines here. It's not much bling on it, right? But what he does with it is a lot. You know, you can tell that, he lines everything up. He makes sure these screws are nicely polished. He makes sure that you have carbon fiber on both sides of the knife. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you look at the finish of this knife, right, it's got sort of this sandblasted finish to it, right, and it's got scratches on it, because obviously you can tell that I've used this knife, right. This is what he, as a knife maker, intended. I want you to use my knife. So he actually on purpose created a finish that he's hoping that the fact that there's all these little scratches on it from use, that's not going to bother you, that it gives the knife character. Now, it sounds kind of silly, but I got to be honest with you, it's kind of true. I mean, because even though it's got the scratches on it, it's still a good-looking knife, man. I mean, it's still great to look at. I mean, everything just fits in line. I mean, you could definitely consider this the crossover. Even though this is a total custom design, you can still act like you're using a ZT. You know what I mean? You can still act like you're using a Spyderco, even though it's not. Because this knife is very, very expensive, obviously, because of the materials that he's using and the time that it takes to put together the knife and the pride that he takes in all the little details on the knife. Even though there's not much, you can't help but notice that the screws are polished on them, right? You can't help to notice that there's two carbon fiber on both sides of the knife. At the same time, it's still a using knife. This is not a knife that you're going to save clean. He's letting you know that off the bat. Finally, the action, okay? I don't know any other knife maker, okay, that tunes in the action this perfect. He's not into knives that fall shut. He wants the knife to have a little bit of give to it. He wants it perfectly tuned in each time. And his centering is always dead. He never, ever, ever has an off-centered knife. I own three of his knives, and I've never seen a knife of his that was ever off-centered. I mean, if you take a good close look at this, that is dead. All of his knives are like that. So he wants you to appreciate using his knife, right? And appreciate the minimum that he's done with the aesthetics on it. And I guess the point of this video is that if you're into getting ready to maybe step into customs, but yet you're not quite ready to let go of the ZTs, the Spyderco, and the way you behave around those knives, then you're going to be paying almost 3 times the price for a knife like Clyde Challenor's. But at the same time, you're also going to know that you don't. It's a beautiful custom that you have in your hand, but you should have no desire to safe queen this thing. You're going to want to use it, and just enjoy the hell out of it, because you shouldn't be buying knives just to put them away in a case and safe queen them. And that's, unfortunately, I'm one of those knife collectors that do that. I'll buy a knife, I'll flip it, I'll close it, I'll check out the action, and I'll put it back in a case. Clyde Challenor actually forces me to use this knife, and you can tell that I've been using it. It's not like I have not. He's made me change my idea and what I think about how I treat my custom knives. So this is one of those that's an okay to use, but yes, it's a custom. And I think he's been very, very successful in his full 15-year career making knives. He's been making knives a long time now. And Clyde Challenor, in order to get all of the aesthetics perfect, to get the action perfect, to get the centering perfect, he embraces CNC machining with made-by-hand techniques together. And that's how you get a perfect folder like the Viper. So now on the other end of the spectrum, we have another knife maker that I'm absolutely crazy about. This guy creates knives quite differently. This is Lawrence Prinsloo. Now, Lawrence Prinsloo doesn't use CNC machining, or if he does, he uses CNC machining to the minimum. The minimum. And when I mean the minimum, I'm going to say probably just the pocket clip gets CNC machined. Everything else on this knife is made by hand. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one for a second. I want to put the Clyde Challenor, because there's two different schools of thought in the knife making here. So here we have Lawrence Prinsloo. Now, Lawrence Prinsloo is almost the same in the sense that he also wants you to use his knives, but he went more for an elegant approach to putting the knife together, aesthetically at least. First of all, the thing that stands out in your eyes is this mosaic Damascus, which is absolutely beautiful. The mosaic Damascus is cut. Each one of these is cut from a brick, so each one of them is completely different. There's no two that are exactly alike. So every knife will be a one-of-a-kind when you get his. And the same goes for Clyde Challenor. He does the same thing, but even more so with Lawrence Prinsloo. He gives you this beautiful Damascus, mosaic Damascus bolster, and the carbon fiber, again, it's got like these the blue marble carbon fiber look like flames on them. Really very, very pretty. And the combination of both of these materials on a knife, you can see that it kind of looks like something that you could wear with a suit, but hey, if you were wearing jeans and you were out somewhere and you needed to cut, something with your knife, maybe even a little bit more heavy duty than normal, this knife would do the job as well. He chooses the sort of modified drop point blade again also. But if we take a look at the blade finishes on it, right? This one's a little bit more rustic looking, kind of like something you would see. See how it's all kind of blurred a little bit? This would be something more you might see on a ZT or a Spyderco, right? So it sort of screams, use me. This one, he stops there, right? But at the blade, at the blade shape, but yet aesthetically, his hand rub technique on the blade finish, it's a little more shinier, right? So he made it a little bit more elegant looking, and you can see that the light reflects off of it, almost to a mirror polish, but not quite. He does the thing where, it's sort of polished on the flats, and then it's kind of like this hand rubbed finish looking, but yet still kind of mirrored, on this actual part of the blade. So you get two schools of thought there. You know what I mean? It's a little shiny here, and it's kind of hand rubbed there. So he's kind of giving you what you want if you wanted to maybe save queen it, right? So it's sort of a knife that, it's elegant enough that you could wear it like a dress up knife, but at the same time, this is a using piece. It's not so fancy that you're going to want to also, again, leave it in a case and never ever use it and just make it, just make it a safe queen. However, my point is this: between these two, if you were going to choose a knife to use for the day and you were going to pick a knife to use heavy duty, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I would probably pick the Challenor knife. While it's still just as handsome as this one, I know for a fact that because it's got these scratches on it and the finish that he chose, right, I'm going to use this one more. It wouldn't piss me off if I got more scratches on this knife doing something heavy duty with it than, say, this one, okay? Here's another thing, too. Clyde Challenor knows that people like to have their knives be one of a kind. They like to have their knives be quite different in every way, shape, or form. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to show you something else. Now, sorry if I left you, but I wanted to show this to you. Now, where Lawrence Prinsloo uses the combination of these two materials, the carbon fiber and the mosaic Damascus, to give you the eye candy that you crave, right? Which would justify why the knife costs so much, right? Clyde Challenor does the same thing. But instead of adding, Clyde Challenor will take away or do something to your knife to make it something completely unique to the owner. And here's what he does. So this is my other Viper. This one is Damascus, and it's black. Both of these are one-of-a-kind Vipers, right? Let me put this aside here. Just want to try and explain. Both of these are Vipers, but if you notice, this one has polished pivots, and on this one, there are no pivots. Isn't that cool? Basically, it's something that he calls Ghost Viper, and as far as I know, this is the only knife that he's made like this, where he ghosted the pivots. They're still there, but basically, he just kind of sandblasted over it so that you don't see the pivots at all. So that gives it another aesthetic, right? Versus what Lawrence Prinsloo does with this mosaic Damascus, right? And the marble carbon fiber. He just takes it away. So he gives you the same feeling of a one-of-a-kind handmade piece by taking away. And on the blackened one, again, he knows he's not going to do, he won't have carbon fiber inlays. He's not going to have Damascus. But what does he do? He will take a look at the carbon fiber on both of these knives. This one, the carbon fiber wraps around the pivot, or I'm sorry, it wraps around the back over here, instead of being like this sort of coffin shape. So he does that to the knife, and he blackened the knife, and on where there are no pivots on here, they're ghosted. Here he just polishes them, right? So two schools of thought here. I mean, this one, to me, is more of a safe queen, just because of all the things that he's done to it, plus the fact it's got a nice Damascus blade. So to me, yeah, I could use this knife, but I have a tendency to want to go ahead and just safe queen it versus this one, which has got the scratches on it, and he designed it in a way that I just can't help but use it. And it'll just, whatever scratches are on it, whatever the deal might be with it, and the way it just adds character to the knife, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it's a beautiful custom nonetheless. You know what I mean? So while both these guys make knives completely, totally differently, on a scale, if I could just describe it, on a scale of like maybe 1 to 10, which one of these would be more of a safe queen knife and more of a user knife based on the aesthetics and the materials that they've chosen? And as knife collectors, we can't help it because we spend so much money on these knives that we want them to be as pristine as they possibly can be. But yet, we don't want to lose the joy of actually using the knife to its fullest capacity. Like, I have no intention of ever safe queening every freaking custom knife that comes along my way. Obviously, I'm going to do that for a while, but after a while, I'm going to want to use these things. I paid for them, I want to use them. And I can't help but think that both these two knife makers created the concept of a knife with that intention. You know what I mean? Because when you buy a custom knife, I mean, the first thing that gets you is the price. I mean, my God, I spent so much money on these things, and yet what I really want to do and what my real intention is with these is just to appreciate them. But are you actually appreciating them in the way that a knife maker intended? So both these knife makers are kind of hoping that the way they've created a knife, you're going to meet them halfway on, actually, you know, using the knife and not limiting what they've created here. Because at the end of the day, as beautiful as these knives look, they're still a tool. There's still something you need to be there's still something that you need to do more with these than just appreciate them on their own aesthetics. You want to appreciate the action, you want to appreciate the cutting ability, and while there are knives out there that are so over the top with the aesthetics that you may never use them, it's kind of nice to know that every knife maker out there, whether they're a Japanese custom knife maker or a South African knife maker or a Canadian knife maker. Somewhere along the way, you're going to want to use the knife. And they're hoping that their interpretation of a knife is going to allow you to open up your mind and actually just go ahead and use the damn thing, guy. I know, thank you that you appreciate that the materials are beautiful, but I didn't create these things just so that you can sit there and say they look beautiful and leave them in a case. These are knives, these are things these are tools to be used on a daily basis. Go ahead and use them. And I think that over time, if you change your way of thinking about custom knives, and basically you're going to leave the idea of how much you paid for these things in the closet and just use the damn things, And that's what's changing in knife making now. I think a lot of the knife makers are moving away from creating these beautiful, knives that look like they're supposed to be Picasso's. They're trying to get back more into the fold, in a sense that every knife maker out there, their idea of a great folder is one that looks aesthetically pleasing and also can function just as well as any production knife out there. And with their personality thrown in there at the same time. And that's the attraction of custom knife buying and what it is that you're buying. Never ever, how do I say this? As a knife collector, you never ever want to, oh God, I'm having difficulty explaining this part. You never ever want to sell the knife maker short by not taking advantage of all the attributes of what you purchased. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So anyway, to sum up this video, while every knife maker creates a knife in their own mind with their own intention and their own personalities in there, at the end of the day, all the knife makers want you to do the same thing. They want you to appreciate their art, but they also don't want you to not take full advantage of what they've created for you. Not deny them the full, I don't know how to, but I'm having difficulty. They don't want you to deny them the full capacity, I guess, of their creation. Does that make any sense? So I guess when you look at custom knives overall, just take each one and try and open up your mind. You want to make sure that you're appreciating the aesthetics, but somewhere down the line you're going to want to use the knife because that's what the knife is made for. At the same time, at the same time, to end it, some knife makers will lean more towards creating a knife that looks more like an elegant piece, that you may want to safe queen it more than the other one. You see what I'm saying? But yet, at the same time, they're looking to make sure that their knives get used. I hope this video was useful to you because I know it was a struggle for me to try to explain what I was trying to say. But I'm going to go ahead and accept all comments on this video because it was so confusing to try and get my point across. But in any case, yeah, this is Omar, your Edge of South Africa guy, or your your South African knife guy coming at you, just trying to explain how knife makers create their knives and how their personalities fit into the knife that you've bought and how that affects you as a buyer and how you're going to behave with that piece of artwork in your hand. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. My next video will be wallets, by the way, not knives. There's a couple of new wallets that I've got coming, and it's very brand new. So those wallets will be coming from wallet maker Michael Bluth of Open Sea Leather, and I really can't wait to get them. In the meantime, I'll see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching, and it is good to be back. Once again, Lawrence Prinsloo, Clyde Challenor Viper. There's no name for this one, by the way. So, over and out. You guys have a good evening.